What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Deep Dives, where we dive deep into issues of theology and culture. My name is Gavin. I'm a pastor and a basketball coach. And for today's episode, we're going to be diving into the subject of what do we do with the holidays. So as you watch the video, like, subscribe to our channel, share the video with somebody you think this may be helpful, and I hope you enjoy. First, as a disclaimer, I think it needs to be said that we record these videos and then put them out at a later date. And so at the time of recording now, Christmas hasn't yet come. So you may be watching this after Christmas, but it ultimately doesn't matter. We're talking about holidays and they come up each and every year. How do I approach Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, the big one, Halloween, Easter? What do I do in approach to these holidays? So for me, growing up in a Caribbean family, my mom's from Jamaica, my dad's from Trinidad. Both countries have a large Christian influence and a spiritual influence as well. And so navigating the holidays was something of a big deal for us. We observed all of them. And I remember as a kid, even being able to get dressed up for Halloween and dress up like Waldo or a Ninja Turtle or something and walk around the neighborhood and get candy and enjoy that time with my friends. But I also remember a very distinct change as I got older. My sister, for example, is 7 years younger than I am. And she didn't get to celebrate a lot of Halloween because we kind of made a distinct movement towards a more spiritual expression of our Christian beliefs and saw the demonic influences in Halloween and maybe chose to not approach it with such carelessness at that time. You probably even remember the controversy when Harry Potter, the books and the movies came out in the early 2000s. If you were kind of tuned into the world of Christianity, there was a lot of debate, and this still goes on today, as to whether or not we should participate in, read, watch those things. And I think it's an important question for us to consider. The first way of approaching it, I think, is purpose. The Bible is very clear that we should worship God and worship Him alone. The first commandment states that you should have no other gods before God. The second commandment says that we should have no idols, no graven images of God. Jesus reinterprets these commands and summarizes them as loving God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so, of course, if I dedicate love and worship to another God, I've now entered into something that I probably shouldn't be doing. And so I've got to examine my own heart and my own intent and say, am I approaching this specific holiday as a way of worshiping and approaching and serving and loving some other God? Some examples might be the way Ramadan is approached in the Islamic faith, the way Passover or Hanukkah is approached in the Jewish faith. Or you could even put into that category showing up on Christmas and Easter alone for church services for the purpose of pleasing God. To summarize what I'm talking about is if I take a holiday and assume that my observance of that holiday correctly, fasting on Ramadan, going to church on Christmas and participating in the Mass, and that God is looking at me, observe the holiday correctly, and then I receive blessings as a result, I believe that's probably the wrong way to approach. The reason I believe that is that I believe Jesus Christ fulfilled the law, died for my sins, and because He's done that, He's completed all of the tasks that are required for my salvation. So therefore, there really isn't anything that I can do. My observance or non-observance of any particular holiday isn't really going to add or subtract from my possibility of salvation. Jesus has already done it all. Well, the second thing, according to purpose, I think is looking at purposelessness. And here's what I mean. Holidays are cultural. I mean, go to any store right now, whatever holiday it is. If Christmas is still approaching, you're going to see Target and Walmart and ice cream shops and Disney World all decorated highly for Christmas. There's wreaths everywhere. They're marketing Christmas movies. Zales is telling you you really don't love your wife if you haven't bought her a diamond yet. And so Christmas is a very cultural thing, and we participate in it as a culture. And so do you approach the holiday with no purpose in mind other than December 25th is approaching? The commercials demonstrate that for me. My favorite TV show has a holiday special that's upcoming. And so therefore I've got to do something Christmas. I got to get together with family. I got to buy gifts. We got to do Secret Santa or White Elephant. And we just do it because it's Christmas time, and that's what we do to celebrate. Is it something that we're doing just for fun because everybody else is doing it and it's tradition? Interject my opinion here. I don't think we should do anything purposelessly. I don't think we should do anything without intention. I don't think we should do anything without understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what's the goal that we're trying to accomplish. Now, by all means, if Christmas is simply an opportunity to get time off from work and visit family and friends, and that's all it means to you, at least you've defined a purpose for it and are approaching it with that. We'll talk a little bit more about the meaning in a minute. The last one, I think, is another important one. The Bible talks a lot about remembrance. So, for example, you have a situation in the Old Testament where God calls his people to cross over the Jordan River. And much like the parting of the Red Sea, God separates the waters so that they can cross. And then he has them pick out a certain number of stones, and the stones would serve as a remembrance of what God has done. Maybe you've heard the words of the Lord's Supper if you've attended church before, and you hear the preacher say, quoting the words of Jesus from 1 Corinthians 11, "Do this in remembrance of me." And so there's a remembrance aspect where God cares about our remembering of things and great works that he's done in the past. Holidays represent that, right? Every time Christmas comes up, you can think of the past gifts that you got and times that you spent with family members. And maybe it even works in reverse, where every time Thanksgiving approaches, you can remember difficult times, or you remember loved ones that you've lost, and it becomes a hard time. But the Bible is clear that remembering things is important. So the question still remains, well then, if it's not about worship and trying to please God, if I'm not being purposeless, but I am being intentional, I'm trying to remember the good things that I've been blessed with, then what about deciding whether or not I should celebrate this holiday? What about my freedom, which I think is the second issue? So you'll find, of course, that when we talk about Christmas trees and Santa, of course, those things aren't in the Bible. The Bible doesn't say to erect a Christmas tree and throw a star on top. It doesn't tell you to tell your kids about Santa and promise them that if they're good, they'll get good gifts, and if they're bad, they might get coal, and they got to stay asleep Christmas Eve night so that Santa doesn't see them. Those things aren't in the Bible, of course. Those are pagan influence, and Halloween isn't a biblical holiday. Neither is Thanksgiving, and Easter really has nothing to do with bunny rabbits and eggs. These are other influences that have come in. So should I disregard these holidays altogether? Again, I think this is where the issue of freedom comes in. The Bible, specifically in 1 Corinthians 8, talks about freedom in how I live my life and approach morally neutral things. The example that's used in the Bible is they would have these festivals where a cow, for example, is sacrificed to appease a foreign god. So going back to purpose, the purpose of the festival is to celebrate, worship, and love this foreign god. And they'd sacrifice a cow, saying, "Here, Baal, this is your cow, and we sacrifice it for you." And afterward, like good stewards, instead of throwing all the meat out, they would cook it, make some filet mignon, make some sirloin, some ribeye, whatever, and serve it to everybody to have a meal. Now, there were those, of course, who are following Jesus, and they know that he commands, don't serve any other gods other than me, don't love any other gods other than me, don't have any other idols. You worship God and God alone. And so there was a level of discomfort. I don't want to eat this steak. It was just sacrificed to a foreign God. Maybe I shouldn't participate. And what Paul emphasizes in that passage is that we should approach this with freedom and with love. At the end of the day, it's just meat. It's an animal created by God with delicious meat if prepared correctly. I have the freedom to eat it. There's no actual God present residing within the meat that's going to fill me and tear me away from my relationship with God. And so if my conscience is free, I can participate in eating it. However, I've got to approach that freedom with the consciousness of love towards my brothers and sisters. And so therefore, if I believe in and celebrate and think Halloween is a fun thing to participate in, but I've got someone who's really bothered by it and doesn't enjoy it and doesn't want to implement it in their family life, then I shouldn't impose my beliefs on him. I shouldn't force them to do things the way that I do. As a matter of fact, out of love, I should love and appreciate and understand the position where they are coming from. We always lead from a posture of love, which I think leads us into the very last point, the gospel. Now, what the gospel is essentially it's the good news that Jesus Christ has conquered the kingdom of darkness. The world as God created it has become corrupt because of the sinful actions of man following the influence of the devil. The gospel proclaims that Jesus Christ has already accomplished all that needs to be accomplished to defeat death and darkness once and for all. Therefore, there is actual gospel freedom when it comes to something like Halloween. Halloween, of course, is that celebration of All Hallows Eve right before All Saints Day. It's kind of traditionally an opportunity to appease pagan gods, to engage in some debauchery, to get drunk and dress up like the dead, right? Now, our American form is really not that. I don't know anybody, maybe you do, but I don't know anybody that's approaching Halloween trying to appease some pagan god. And actually, I would go so far as to say our American expression of it is a mockery of the pagan practice. And so when I think about Halloween, I think about an opportunity for my kids to dress up as their favorite characters, Ninja Turtles this year, Spider-Man as well. My daughter dressed up as a girl version of a Ninja Turtle and as a princess, and they had fun going and getting candy and having a good time. And I approach it as, man, Jesus has come and he's conquered death. I can make a mockery of skeletons and zombies and vampires because those things don't actually exist. All things that are representative of the dead have been put to death by Jesus Christ dying on the cross. I live in complete freedom in this new world, this new expression of the kingdom, in hope of the new heavens and new earth that is to come. However, out of love, I respect the position of someone else who maybe doesn't see it that way. I respect the conscience of someone who isn't comfortable with celebrating Halloween in that way. And the same goes for Christmas and Easter and all of those things. I think what's also important is the idea of redemption. Again, when we talk about the gospel, we're not just talking about Christ conquering, but we're also talking about Christ redeeming, where God is making all things new. The promise of Revelation 21 is that God will make all things new. And so I'm part of that. I'm a sinner who's broken God's law in several places and is worthy of judgment. And rather than being cast aside and thrown out, God has chosen to redeem me. So I believe all things can be worthy of redemption. And so if our society has taken a Christian idea like the birth of Jesus Christ at Christmas and has packaged it with pagan ideas like Christmas trees and Santa Claus, and then has now converted it to a marketing strategy to feed consumerism, I've got a couple of options there. I can throw it out completely because, man, this thing is a pagan practice and has gone so far from celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ. Or I can approach it like my Savior does and use it as an opportunity for redemption. See the celebration of Christmas as the living on legacy of the celebration of Jesus' birth, of the good gospel ideology of considering family and wanting to be around family members and show love and sacrifice and service and express hospitality. These are good gospel things. So I want to emphasize those things. And if I've got someone who celebrates Christmas along with me but doesn't know Jesus, rather than casting them aside for celebrating the holiday the wrong way, I want to bring them into an understanding of who Jesus is and why family is important and why gift giving is a good thing and why we can celebrate this together. It's the posture of redemption. And so I would ask you to consider that as you approach the holidays, approach it from that perspective. How does this occasion point to the love that's in Jesus Christ? Valentine's Day, an expression of love and relationships, a celebration of marriage. How can I put that on display for the purposes of Jesus Christ? Juneteenth, a celebration of freedom for all people. How can I celebrate that in such a way that emphasizes the gospel freedom that's already been granted in Jesus Christ? Thanksgiving, giving thanks to my God for all of the blessings that he continues to provide and the grace that he's shown towards me, even in my guilt and my sinfulness. And so maybe the holidays is an opportunity for us to put those things on display for a watching world, where finally we have some commonality to talk about deeper spiritual things, and the holidays provide an occasion for that. So pray that God would open your eyes to see them that way, even Halloween included, as an opportunity to connect with some fun with your neighbors and friends at school and co-workers, as a way to show them, hey, Jesus Christ has conquered death. We ain't afraid of zombies because Jesus has promised us an eternity in his kingdom. I hope that this episode is helpful for you. Again, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.